The Galactic Council's chamber fell silent as Ambassador Varro Crane of Earth stood tall, his weathered face a mask of controlled fury. 200 representatives from across the known universe averted their gaze, all except the 7 High Counselors who had just delivered humanity's death sentence. "Let the record show," High Counselor Elzix announced, her crystalline appendages catching the light, "that by a vote of 6-1, Earth's petition for protection against the Drakari Empire is denied. The Council does not recognize sufficient evidence of impending hostilities." Varro's fists clenched. "The Drakari fleet masses at our borders while you debate semantics? We've shown you the orbital scans." "Circumstantial," Elzix replied coldly. "The Drakari ambassador assures us these are routine military exercises." Ambassador Orn of the Drakari smiled, rows of needle-like teeth gleaming beneath 4 calculating eyes. "Perhaps if humans hadn't rejected our generous resource-sharing proposals, your proposals demanded 90% of Earth's water and rare minerals," Varro shot back. "You offered trinket technology in return." High Counselor Malachi, the lone dissenter and oldest among them, sighed deeply. "I fear we may be repeating the mistakes of the Altarian extinction." "The Council has spoken," Elzix declared, slamming her gavel. "This matter is closed." Varro straightened his uniform bearing the insignia of the United Earth Defense Force. For 27 years, humanity had played by the Galactic Council's rules, believing in the promise of a peaceful federation of species. They had been naive. "Remember this moment," he announced, his voice echoing through the chamber. "Remember when humanity came to you as allies and left as prey. Remember when we warned you that the Drakari will never stop with Earth." The journey back to Sol System was the longest 17 days of Varro's life. Through quantum entanglement, communications, he received hourly reports of Drakari ships moving closer to Earth's defensive perimeter. By the time he reached Mars Station, the first skirmishes had already begun. Admiral Lyra Vesh greeted him in the war room, her obsidian skin contrasting with her platinum commander's insignia. Once Earth's most celebrated physicist, she had pivoted to military leadership when alien contact proved less benevolent than humanity had hoped. "They've blockaded the Jupiter mining colonies," she reported, projecting a holographic display of the solar system. "Their capital ships are still holding position, but fighter squads are testing our orbital defenses every 6 hours. "And the Council?" asked General Ryzen, head of Earth's ground forces. "Exactly as we predicted," Varro replied bitterly. "They won't lift a finger." Lyra's expression hardened. "Then we implement Prometheus Protocol." The room fell silent. Prometheus had been deemed too dangerous, too radical by half the military leadership. It meant abandoning 2 decades of integration efforts with the galactic community. It meant becoming what the Council feared most, a species that prioritized survival over diplomacy. "The vault beneath Mount Ozaki," Varro said quietly. "The forbidden technologies we agreed to seal away as a condition of our Council membership." "Not just those," Lyra replied. "Project Lazarus, Operation Dark Mirror, the quantum phase disruptors. Everything we've kept hidden even from the Council's inspectors." General Ryzen rubbed his scarred face. "Some of those technologies aren't just violations of Council law. They're dangerous. The neural interfaces alone could change what it means to be human." "And the alternative?" Varro asked, pointing to the hologram where Drakari ships now numbered in the hundreds. "Extinction?" The decision required only a moment. Humanity had tried peace. They had shown restraint. They had trusted in the greater good of a galactic community, and they had been forsaken. "Activate all black sites," Lyra commanded. "Commence Prometheus Protocol. If humanity must stand alone against the darkness, then we will become the fire that burns even in the void." As the orders went out, Varro watched the stars through the station viewport. Somewhere out there, the Council continued its deliberations, believing they had neutralized the human problem. They would soon learn their mistake. Humanity had been forsaken, but they had not been defeated. Not yet. 3 months later, the research facility beneath Lake Baikal buzzed with frenetic energy. Dr. Nix Solari moved between workstations, her augmented neural pathways processing multiple data streams simultaneously, an illegal modification under council regulations. But those rules no longer mattered. "Breakthrough in Sector 7!" called out her colleague, Dr. Echo Vale, his hands dancing through holographic schematics. The Drakari shields failed against the third variant of the phase disruptor. Nix allowed herself a brief smile. The Drakari had expected an easy conquest, not understanding that humans had been preparing for the worst since first contact revealed a galaxy teeming with predatory civilizations. "How long until we can deploy?" she asked. "Production begins tomorrow." 2 weeks to outfit the main fleet. Across Earth's hidden facilities, similar scenes played out. Technologies once deemed too destructive or revolutionary were now humanity's lifeline. At the Nepal complex, scientists perfected combat exoskeletons that enhanced human strength tenfold. Under the Sahara, engineers constructed drone swarms, guided by quantum entanglement, making them impossible to jam. Most controversial was the work at the former CERN facility, now expanded into a massive underground complex. There, Dr. Zareen Keldor led efforts to perfect the Nexus protocol, direct neural interfaces that allowed human operators to merge consciousness with warships, becoming one with their weapons. "The subject's brain activity is stabilizing," reported. Keldor, as pilot commander Ivo Rask, underwent the procedure. Neural mapping at 94% compatibility. Commander Rask's body lay motionless while his mind expanded into the systems of the UES Thunderchild, Earth's newest dreadnought. "I can feel every part of her." His voice emerged from the ship's communication systems. "Weapons, engines, sensors. They're extensions of my body now. It's beautiful." The Nexus protocol had been abandoned years ago after council inspectors warned of spiritual corruption and loss of humanity. Now it represented evolution by necessity. In orbit above Mars, Admiral Lyra Vesh received the latest intelligence from stealth probes. The Drakari had conquered 3 outer colonies, but were advancing more cautiously now, surprised by humanity's unexpectedly fierce resistance. "They've called for reinforcements," reported Intelligence Officer Mara Keon, her artificial eye scanning data feeds. 6 additional battle groups crossing the heliopause. "How long until our fleet retrofits are complete?" Lyra asked. 72 hours for primary battle group. The Lazarus carriers need additional time. The Lazarus project represented another forbidden path, self-replicating drone motherships that could harvest resources and produce combat units autonomously. The Council had banned such technology after the von Neumann incident destroyed an entire star system 3 centuries ago. On Earth's moon, Ambassador Varro supervised the construction of what might be humanity's last embassy, a fortified bunker, where representatives from neutral species could negotiate without revealing Earth's location. "The Ferenczi delegation has arrived," his aide reported. "They bring technology schematics as promised." The Ferenczi, insectoid engineers who had suffered under Drakari expansion generations earlier, had reached out secretly after hearing of Earth's resistance. They weren't the only ones. The Kithri, the Volan Confederacy, even factions within the synthetic metahive, all had grievances against either the Drakari or the Council's policy of non-intervention. "Show them in," Varro ordered, "and prepare the secondary conference room for the Kithri. It's time we formed a new alliance, one based on mutual defense rather than empty promises." As Earth burned resources at an unprecedented rate, transforming its peaceful economy into a war machine, humanity changed as well. Neural enhancements, once restricted to medical applications, became commonplace among military personnel. Physical augmentations designed for space exploration were repurposed for combat. In her quarters aboard the Mars Command Station, Admiral Lyra reviewed the latest transformation of Earth's forces. The species that had been denied protection was protecting itself, crossing lines they once would never have considered. "We are becoming what we feared," she whispered to the empty room. But when the alternative was extinction, fear of change meant nothing. The Council had made its choice, and humanity had made theirs. As the retrofitted Earth fleet prepared to break the Drakari blockade, signals arrived from across the galaxy. The Drakari were mobilizing their main battle fleets. The coming conflict would not be a simple conquest. It would be a war of annihilation. The UES Defiance emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Proxima Centauri system, its hull bearing fresh scars from the Battle of Europa. Captain Ilara Voss stood on the bridge, her military uniform modified to accommodate the neural interface ports running along her spine. "Drakari signatures detected," announced Tactical Officer Caden Reed, his cybernetically enhanced reflexes, guiding his hands across the weapons console. 3 capital ships, 17 support vessels. Ilara nodded. "Deploy swarm units Alpha through Echo. Activate the phase shields." The Defiance shuddered as automated launch bays released thousands of miniature drones, each barely larger than a human fist but armed with directed energy weapons and impervious to standard countermeasures. 6 months into the war, humanity had shocked the galaxy. The Drakari conquest, expected to take weeks, had stalled. Now, Earth forces were pushing back, reclaiming lost territory and deploying technologies that made Council representatives tremble. On the Defiance's observation deck, Sentinel Orion Vex watched the battle unfold. Once a diplomat like Vero, he now served as liaison to the growing coalition of species joining humanity's resistance. His body housed more technology than flesh, a radical transformation he had undergone voluntarily after surviving a Drakari. "Prisoner camp. The Council representatives have arrived," his assistant informed him. "They're waiting in the diplomatic chamber." "Let them wait," Orion replied coolly. "They should witness what their neutrality has wrought." Below, the battle for Proxima Centauri unfolded with brutal efficiency. The human swarm drones overwhelmed Drakari point defenses, while the Defiance's phase cannons, technology deemed too destabilizing by Council regulations, tore through enemy shields as if they were tissue paper. When Orion finally entered the diplomatic chamber, 3 Council observers rose to greet him. Their expressions betrayed their discomfort at the changes. "In the human before them, Sentinel Vex," began the Aldarian representative Julon. "The Council wishes to discuss the concerning developments in human military technology. These neural interfaces and autonomous weapons systems violate numerous—" "Spare me," Orion interrupted. "Your concerns come too late. Where was the Council? When Drakari forces bombarded New Shanghai Colony? Where were your peacekeepers when they harvested humans for biological experimentation on Titan Station? We have initiated sanctions against the Drakari Empire," offered Melikai, the elderly counselor who had been humanity's lone advocate. "Their trading rights have been restricted." A harsh laugh escaped Orion's augmented vocal cords. "Sanctions? While they committed genocide? You still don't understand what's happening, do you? This isn't just about humanity's survival anymore." He activated a holographic display showing dozens of worlds across the galactic rim, small colonies and outposts far from Council protection. These independent settlements have formed a mutual defense pact with Earth. The Kithri worlds in the Sagittarius Arm have contributed their stealth technology. The Ferenxi have joined with their engineering expertise. "This is highly irregular," sputtered the 3rd representative. "Coalition building without Council oversight is survival," finished Orion. "While you debate in your protected chambers, species on the rim face extinction. Humanity offered them something you never did, genuine protection backed by strength." At that moment, alarms blared across the ship. "Sentinel," came Captain Elara's voice. "The Drakari flagship is attempting to flee. Permission to deploy the Void Lance?" The council representatives paled. The Void Lance, a weapon that temporarily created an artificial singularity, was strictly forbidden under all council treaties. "Permission granted," Orion replied without hesitation. Through the viewport, they watched as a controlled black hole briefly winked into existence, engulfing the Drakari command ship before collapsing back into nothingness. "What you're witnessing," Orion told the stunned representatives, "is the birth of a new power. Not just humanity evolved, but an alliance of species who no longer accept the Council's protection racket, promising safety while delivering nothing." As the Council members departed, shaken by what they had witnessed, Admiral Lyra contacted the Defiance from Earth Command. "The Proxima operation was successful," Elara reported. "The Council observers got their demonstration. And the Drakari? Retreating across all sectors. Their losses are substantial." Lyra's holographic projection nodded solemnly. "The Phase 3 counteroffensive begins tomorrow. While we have momentum, we strike at the heart of Drakari space. What had begun as a desperate defense had evolved into something more, a revolution against both Drakari aggression and Council indifference. Humanity, once a minor newcomer to galactic politics, was rapidly becoming the nucleus of a new power block. As the Defiance prepared to jump to the next battlefield, Orion contemplated what they were becoming. The neural augmentations and militarized technology were changing human society itself. Children born during the war were already being enhanced for survival in this new reality. He wondered if they could find their way back to peace once this was over. Or if humanity's embrace of strength had permanently altered their path among the stars. High above the Drakari homeworld of Kravosh, a diplomatic shuttle flew under heavy escort. Inside, Ambassador Varro Crane, now serving as Earth's Chancellor of Interstellar Affairs, prepared to negotiate terms that would have been unimaginable a year earlier. "They've agreed to all primary conditions," reported his aide, Liana Moro, herself a veteran of the Mars defense campaign. A prosthetic arm replaced the limb she had lost in that battle, now upgraded with military-grade enhancements that the Council would have once forbidden. "And the Council representatives?" Varro asked. "Relegated to observer status, as you insisted." Varro nodded with satisfaction. After 18 months of conflict, the war had reached a decisive turning point. The Drakari Empire, once the greatest predatory power in the sector, now faced not just defeat, but potential collapse. The transformation of humanity had been profound. What began as desperate survival measures had evolved into a technological revolution. Nexus protocol pilots could now meld with their ships instantly, acting with machine precision while retaining human creativity. The Lazarus carriers had multiplied, creating a fleet larger than any in Council records. Most concerning to outside observers were the Phantom Brigades, soldiers who had undergone such extensive augmentation that they existed in a state between human and machine. The diplomatic reception hall on Kravosh bore the scars of orbital bombardment. Emperor Krazek, once the embodiment of Drakari supremacy, now awaited Earth's demands with 4 of his 6 limbs bound in ceremonial chains. "Chancellor Crane," he hissed as Varro entered, "have you come to witness our humiliation?" "Personally? I've come to ensure this never happens again," Varro replied evenly. "To any species. The terms dictated by Earth and its growing coalition were severe. Complete demilitarization of the Drakari Empire, reparations to all affected worlds, and the installation of monitoring stations throughout Drakari space. But most shocking to the observing Council representatives was the final condition: genetic monitoring of the Drakari population to ensure compliance. "This crosses all ethical boundaries," protested High Counselor Elzix after the Drakari delegation had accepted the terms. Genetic tracking of an entire species violates the Foundational Rights Accord. The same accord you refused to enforce when the Drakari were hunting humans. Varro's voice remained calm but carried an edge of steel. Your ethics are luxuries afforded by safety. Safety you denied us when we needed it most. The Human Coalition's new approach had shattered the galactic status quo. Species that had quietly suffered under Drakari expansion now flocked to Earth's alliance. The Axiom Concordat, as it was called, now included 17 former council members who had grown disillusioned with policies of non-intervention. Back on Earth, the changes were even more dramatic. The emergency neural enhancement programs had expanded beyond military applications. Entire generations were being adapted to interface with advanced technology from birth. Medical augmentation had eliminated most diseases. The average human lifespan had extended by decades in just 2 years. In her laboratory beneath the Urals, Dr. Nix Solari supervised the final testing of the Ascension Protocol, the most radical evolution of human capability yet conceived. Neural. Density has increased by 340% in the test subjects, reported Dr. Echo. Cognitive processing speed is beyond our ability to measure accurately. And psychological stability? Nix asked, the concern evident in her voice. Within acceptable parameters, though their perspective is shifting. They no longer think quite like us. This was the path humanity had chosen, not just to match their adversaries, but to exceed them, to ensure that never again would they be vulnerable to species that had evolved under harsher conditions or developed for millions of years longer. As Varro's shuttle returned from the Drakari surrender ceremony, he received a priority communication. From Admiral Lyra, the Council has called an emergency session, she informed him. They're voting on a resolution to declare the Axiom Concordat a threat to galactic stability. Varro's expression remained neutral. They fear what they created. Perhaps with reason, Lyra replied. The Phantom Brigades are requesting permission to begin operations in Council space to protect our new allies from potential retaliation. For a moment, Varro hesitated. The line between defense and aggression had blurred months ago. The technologies humanity had embraced to survive were reshaping not just their capabilities, but their values. Approve the deployment, he finally ordered, but surveillance only. No preemptive actions. As the shuttle entered Earth's atmosphere, Varro gazed down at the transformed planet. Massive arcologies housed research complexes dedicated to transhuman evolution. Orbital platforms constructed ships that could cross the galaxy in weeks rather than months. Humanity had embraced strength as their salvation, but at what cost to their soul? Chancellor, Liana interrupted his thoughts. Admiral Lyra reports that protests have broken out on 3 Earth cities. The neo-humanist movement is gaining support. Not everyone approved of humanity's new path. The neo-humanists advocated for limits on augmentation, for reconciliation with the Council, for a return to pre-war values. Once dismissed as nostalgic idealists, their message was resonating with citizens weary of constant military mobilization. As his shuttle landed, Varro wondered if the greatest battle still lay ahead, not against alien enemies, but within humanity, itself over what they were becoming. The council chamber that had once dismissed humanity's pleas now sat half-empty, its grand architecture failing to disguise the power shift that had occurred. Where once 200 species were represented, now barely 120 remained. The others had joined the Axiom Concordat or declared neutrality in the growing galactic divide. High Counselor Melikai, now the most senior member after Elzix's resignation, gavelled the session to order. We recognize Ambassador Zareen Keldor of Earth, he announced. Dr. Keldor, once the lead researcher on the Nexus Protocol and now Earth's representative, approached the central podium. Her augmentations were subtle compared to many humans, but Unmistakable. Neural filaments visible beneath translucent skin, eyes that shifted color with her emotional state, the slight hum of internal systems that enhanced everything from cognition to cellular regeneration. The Axiom Concordat presents its final offer of cooperation, she began without preamble. We propose a restructuring of galactic governance based on three principles: actual protection, rather than theoretical neutrality, technological advancement, without arbitrary restrictions, and self-determination for all sentient species. After 3 years of rapidly shifting power dynamics, the Council faced a fundamental choice. The human-led Concordat now controlled nearly 40% of known space. Their technological advancement continued at a pace that alarmed the oldest Council species. "This is not cooperation, it is coercion," countered the Thalasian representative. "Your protection comes with military occupation. Your technological sharing programs create dependency on human-designed interfaces." Captain Alara Voss, now Admiral of the 5th Concordat Fleet, watched the proceedings from aboard the UES Prometheus. The massive vessel represented the pinnacle of human military evolution, a Nexus-class dreadnought with a crew of 50 operating a ship that once would have required thousands. "They still don't understand," she remarked to Sentinel Orion, who stood beside her on the command deck. "We're offering them salvation from their own complacency." The threats facing the galaxy had only grown since the Drakari conflict. Beyond Council space, long-dormant powers had taken notice of the shift in power. The Void Collective, a mysterious force from the galactic core, had begun probing expeditions into settled systems. Ancient automated defense systems left by extinct precursor civilizations had reactivated, perhaps triggered by the energy signatures of new weapons technologies. On Earth, the changes continued to unfold. The neo-humanist movement had gained enough support to win representation in the Global Assembly, advocating for moderation in augmentation policies and diplomatic reconnection with Council species. In contrast, the evolutionist faction pushed for even more radical transformation. Their most extreme members had established colonies on exoplanets specifically engineered to accelerate adaptation, embracing physical modifications that made them barely recognizable as human descendants. Chancellor Varro, still guiding Earth's interstellar policy, found himself increasingly caught between these competing visions of humanity's future. His own body remained mostly unaugmented, a rarity among Earth's leadership, though a basic neural interface allowed him to process information at enhanced speeds. At his private residence in the Himalayan Arcology, he received a secure transmission from Dr. Nix Solari, now director of the Ascension Initiative. "The first test subjects have completed their final metamorphosis," she reported, her expression conveying both awe and concern. "Their cognitive capabilities exceed our predictive models. They're communicating in ways we can barely comprehend." "Are they still human?" Varro asked. Nix hesitated. "Genetically, yes. Experientially, they're becoming something else. They've begun referring to themselves collectively as Novus Homo, new human. This was the inevitable endpoint of the path humanity had chosen. Not just augmentation for survival, but evolution beyond their original limitations. The Ascension Protocol subjects could perceive reality in ways ordinary humans could not, processing information across spectrums and dimensions previously inaccessible." Meanwhile, in the Council chamber, Zareen faced growing hostility from conservative representatives. "The Concordat has delivered on its promises," she reminded them. "The Drakari threat has been neutralized. The criminal cartels that once operated with impunity in the Outer Rim have been dismantled. Our member worlds enjoy unprecedented security and prosperity." "At what cost?" asked Malachi solemnly. "I supported humanity's plea for help years ago. I recognized the injustice of our inaction. But what you have become—" He gestured to her augmented form. "Is this truly the destiny you choose? To transcend your own nature until you are unrecognizable even to yourselves?" Zareen's enhanced eyes shifted to a deep violet. a sign of contemplation in her emotional spectrum. "We didn't choose this destiny," she replied. "You chose it for us when you abandoned us to face extinction alone. We embraced strength because the alternative was oblivion. Now we offer that strength to protect others." As the council deliberated, Admiral Lyra received alarming intelligence aboard Earth's orbital command station. Long-range sensors detected massive energy signatures approaching from beyond charted space. The Void Collective had launched its first major incursion. "Alert all concordant forces," she ordered. "Prepare the Phantom Brigades for immediate deployment." The irony wasn't lost on her. Humanity had transformed itself to survive the Drakari threat, only to face an even greater danger. The Council had feared what humans were becoming, not realizing that something far worse lurked beyond known space. As Concordat battle fleets mobilized, Varro contemplated the crossroads humanity had reached. They had survived abandonment. They had embraced strength and evolution, but in the process, they were becoming something neither their ancestors nor their contemporaries fully recognized. The question that haunted him wasn't whether they could defeat this new threat, but whether what emerged victorious would still be humanity at all. The observation deck of the UES Prometheus offered an unobstructed view of the battlefield. Chancellor Varro Crane stood alone, watching as the combined Concordant fleet engaged the first wave of the Void Collective's invasion force. 5 years had passed since humanity's forsaken plea to the Council. In that time, they had transformed, from vulnerable newcomers to the dominant military power in the sector. And now, they faced an enemy that threatened not just Earth or the Concordat, but all life in the galaxy. "Chancellor," Admiral Lyra's voice came through his neural interface. "The Council representatives have arrived. They're requesting immediate audience." "Bring them to me," he replied. Minutes later, High Counselor Malachi and representatives from 7 major council species entered the observation deck. Their expressions registered shock at the scale of the conflict unfolding before them. Hundreds of vessels locked in combat, weapon systems that defied conventional physics, and at the I.O. center, the mysterious black ships of the Void Collective. "By the ancients," whispered a Thalasian diplomat. "There are so many of them." "This is what we've been preparing for," Varro stated simply. "While the Council debated the ethics of our evolution, we were building the only force capable of stopping this invasion." On the battlefield, the difference between Council military doctrine and Concordat forces was stark. Nexus integrated commanders directed swarms of autonomous weapons platforms. Phantom Brigade operatives, their bodies more machine than flesh, performed targeted strikes against enemy command nodes. Most impressive were the Novus Homo, the fully evolved humans from the Ascension Protocol, who coordinated battlefield information at a level that approached precognition. "Chancellor," began Malachi solemnly, "the Council has authorized me to propose a mutual defense agreement against this common threat." A bitter smile touched Varro's lips. "Now you seek alliance? When the darkness is at your door?" "We acknowledge our error," the ancient counselor admitted. "When we abandoned Earth, we set in motion events we could not foresee. But surely you cannot condemn the entire galaxy for our mistake." Before Varro could respond, a priority alert flashed across his neural interface. Dr. Nick Solari requested emergency communication from the Ascension facility on Mars. "Patch her through," he commanded. Nix's holographic projection appeared before them, her expression urgent. "Chancellor, the Novus Homo have made contact with the Void Collective's consciousness. What we're facing isn't just an invasion, it's a harvesting operation. They consume evolved sentience to fuel their expansion." "Can they be reasoned with?" Varro asked. "No," Nix replied grimly. "They perceive all other life as resources. But the Novus believe they've identified a weakness, a way to close the dimensional rift the Collective uses to enter our space. What do they need? Access to the Nexus core on Earth. They believe they can reconfigure it to generate a resonance field that will seal the rift permanently. The Nexus Core, the central hub of humanity's neural network and the most heavily protected facility on the planet. Granting the increasingly alien Novus Homo access to it would place Earth's entire augmented population under their influence. Is there no alternative? Varro asked. None that they can perceive across all probability matrices, Nix responded. The Void Collective has done this before, consumed thousands of galaxies across millions of years. This is our only chance, Aro. Turned to Melikai and the Council representatives. You see our dilemma. To save the galaxy, we must trust those who have evolved beyond what we recognize as human. The very transformation you feared may be our only salvation. Melikai stepped forward. Then let it be a shared decision, not just Earth's, not just the Concordats, but one made by all sentient species who call this galaxy home. For the first time in years, Varro felt something like hope. Not for victory, that remained uncertain, but for reconciliation. The crisis had forced both humanity and the Council to recognize their mutual dependence. Open an emergency channel. To all Concordat and Council worlds, he ordered. We make this decision together. As the battle raged on, representatives from across the galaxy deliberated. The Novus Homo presented their plan directly, their thoughts translated into concepts other species could comprehend. The risks were enormous, granting such power to beings already transcending ordinary consciousness. But the alternative was extinction. The vote was nearly unanimous. Survival required trust. On Earth, the Nexus Core hummed with unprecedented energy as the Novus Homo interfaced with it, their consciousness expanding through the neural network that connected all augmented humans. Through this vastly distributed intelligence, they began the complex calculations needed to seal the dimensional rift. In orbit above the primary battleground, Admiral Lyra directed the combined fleet to focus all firepower on protecting the flagship, where the Novus were coordinating their efforts. Concordat and Council vessels fought side by side, former enemies now united against a common threat. "Hold the line!" she commanded as Void Collective vessels pressed their attack, seemingly sensing the danger to their invasion path. On the Prometheus observation deck, Varro and Melikai watched as reality itself began to warp around the rift. Space-time folded and twisted as the Novus Homo executed their plan, channeling energy through the Nexus Core to create a resonance field that would seal the Void Collective's entry point. If this works, Melikai said quietly, the galaxy will owe its existence to what humanity became after we abandoned you. And if we survive, Varro replied, perhaps we can build something better together. A true federation where strength protects the vulnerable and advancement benefits all. The dimensional rift collapsed with a silent flash that momentarily blinded all visual sensors. When the systems recovered, the black ships of the Void Collective had vanished, cut off from their home dimension and rendered dormant. In the silence that followed, Admiral Lyra's voice came through the command channel. "Chancellor, it's done. The rift is sealed." Throughout human space, augmented citizens experienced a moment of shared consciousness as the Novus Homo completed their task. A brief glimpse of a perspective vast enough to comprehend threats that spanned dimensions and timescales beyond ordinary understanding. On the observation deck, Chancellor Varro turned to address the Council representatives. The threat is contained, but not ended. The Void Collective will try again. We need to be ready, not as separate factions, but as a united galaxy. Melikai nodded solemnly. The old Council is finished. Its failures are too great to ignore. But, perhaps from its ashes, we can build something new, something that honors both the wisdom of ancient species and the strength humanity has shown us is necessary. As the combined fleet began recovery operations, Varro gazed out at the stars. Humanity had been forsaken once, forced to embrace strength rather than peace. That choice had transformed them into something new, something powerful enough to save the very civilization that had abandoned them. The path forward remained uncertain. The Novus Homo were evolving beyond baseline human comprehension. The technologies, developed for war, needed to find purpose in peace. Ancient rivalries still simmered beneath the surface of temporary alliance. But for the first time since the Council had denied Earth's plea for help, Varro felt certain that humanity would not only survive, but thrive. They had proven that true. Strength came not just from technology or evolution, but from the will to protect others when no one else would. "We were forsaken," he said quietly, "but never broken, and in our darkest hour, we became the light." Beyond the viewport, the combined fleet formed up in a new formation, Council and Concordate vessels together, a symbolic gesture of unity that would soon be formalized in a new compact. Not a relationship of dependency or domination, but of mutual respect between equals. Humanity had been transformed by necessity. Now they would help transform the galaxy by choice, not through conquest, but through the strength they had embraced when peace was denied them. The stars seemed brighter somehow as the fleet set course for Earth, carrying the architects of a new galactic order, one built not on empty promises, but on proven strength and shared survival.